All right, guys. So we're going to launch into today's Contractors Roundtable. Thank you very much for joining me today. I see people still joining. So for those of you who are joining us, if you can please in the chat post where you're calling in from, what company you're with. I want to see who we have here so I can really tailor this presentation to who we have with us today. So where you're calling from and what company you're with. I see you there. James, Jason, Justin, Mariella, Sutter. All right. Florida, over here in Fort Lauderdale on the East Coast. Hey, James, Sarasota. I was just in North Captiva. North Captiva Island is a little island off of Sanibel where there is no cars and you have to get there by boat, and there's just some little Key West style houses and you get a bunch of golf carts. It's a really nice gem that me and my wife like to go to. We bring our dog and he's having fun at the beach all day as we have just a really great relaxation time. We like to go there at least once a year. It's one of our favorite spots. All right, so we're going to hop in. Today we're going to talk about how to streamline your project management process. And today, why are we talking about this? Because in roofing, in construction, streamlining the money is made in your project management process. You can sell high margin jobs, but if you are not optimizing your project management process, your margin is falling through the cracks. You're just flushing it down the drain. And the problem with our project management process really comes down to a few fundamentals. Number one, you might feel like you're drowning as a project manager. You're running around, you're going to this job, to that job, you're managing multiple jobs at a time, the permits that's needed, the inspections that's needed, coordinating materials, crews. You might feel like you're drowning. And all of your other project management teammates out there feel like they're drowning too, because there's just a lot of things that need to get done. I know of a contractor that has broken down their project management process into 80 something different steps that one person is responsible for. And that's a lot. It's hard to coordinate it all, get things done on time, which brings us to our next point here is you feel like there's not enough time to do everything. And the reason why you might feel that way is because a lot of different reasons, and we'll go into that here in just a second, but there's some reasons why we feel like we have enough time. But here's the thing, we all have 24 hours in a day. We all have the same amount of time to do the same amount of work. And so we have to ask ourselves this question is, what makes the best of the best in the world more productive than somebody else? So Jeff Bezos, right? How does he get so much done? Does he have more hours in a day? Obviously not. He gets more done because he does certain things with his time to leverage his time. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about here. Another reason why you might feel like you're drowning is that you're wearing too many hats. Some of you might be selling the job and managing the job after the contract is sold. That's a lot of different hats. Even within project management, maybe you're managing a crew. Maybe you're managing the administrative side. Maybe you're managing the sales team. Too many hats. If you're wearing too many hats, things will start to fall through the cracks. So what you're going to feel like is that you spend your life firefighting. And you're putting out this fire, that fire, no OSHA violations over here or there. And what we've come up with is something called the vicious cycle. And we start out feeling we have no time. So what do? We cut corners. And then when we cut corners, guess what happens? We make mistakes. And then after we make mistakes, guess what? It eats up all of our time. And now we're back to number one, right? So it's a vicious cycle that we have to really identify what's going on and dig ourselves out of the hole that sometimes we build ourselves. So I want to hear in the chat, what are the biggest issues that you would say comes to mind when you're thinking about your project management process? What are the pain points that you guys are feeling? Put that there in the chat. Put that there in the chat. What's the hardest part about managing projects for you? No time. Yep, totally understand that. What else? Everybody's doing their own thing. Yep, totally understand that. Wearing too many hats. Totally understand that. All right, so here's my promise for us today. My promise for us is that we're going to be able to identify what the problem is within your project management process and have a take home for us to look at how other companies are managing their projects and to improve our project management process so we can make more margin. And so if we do that, the number one key principle that you need to know to get started along this journey is to know your process. A process is just a path to the result. So what is really helpful is to know that process and having step by step, even if it's a little step or a half step, knowing your process. Some people don't know the process and they're just kind of walking blindly. So knowing your process is critical. You have to know where you're at to know where you're going, right? So once you know your process, and this starts at the executive level, it starts to trickle down to the rest of the company. And you'll be surprised to see what gaps you might find in the knowledge of the rest of your company when you're not knowing your process. And from knowing your process, then comes to sharing your process. When you share that process that you have well defined from executive leadership of this is exactly what needs to get done to execute on a project, you have to do that because it comes from the top down. If steps are skipped in the process, management needs to identify that on where the gap is in your process so that you can fill in those gaps, those knowledge gaps, those experience gaps, and help your team. But you could only do that if you're all on the same page when it comes to your personal process at your company. And guess what? For your large jobs, and maybe your large commercial jobs or your residential jobs or your service jobs, they all might have different processes within it, right? So it's very important to have your executive leadership team to really define that process. And once you have it defined, document it. If you don't document it, then it's going to fall through the cracks. So I recommend literally just throwing up a PowerPoint presentation, putting bullets on the PowerPoint, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and write out every step in your process, or a spreadsheet to do that as well. If you don't document your process, then you're going to drop the ball. It's what gets measured gets done, and what gets written down and gets remembered, and then you have a tool to keep the rest of your team accountable with. So definitely documenting your process is crucial. From there, once you have it shared and documented, break it down. And you got to break it down into bite-sized chunks. That's why I have a picture of an apple here. So you might break your process down and say, okay, the first step of managing a project is the pre-construction step. Well, within that, there might be 20 different activities that you need to get done, whether it's a permit, whether it's putting together a job folder, whether it's having an inspection, whether it's reviewing the plans with the client. There are tons of steps within your step. And to the degree you have that detail, if you don't have the detail, people are going to glance over it, think it's not important, or just move too quickly and miss it. So break it down into bite bite-sized portions so that your people can grasp and understand. Next thing, once you have broken down your steps, set reminders and set expectations. Here's what I mean by that. For a big, $200,000, $300,000 job, the reminders and expectations for the activities that need to be accomplished are going to be different than a small residential, $5,000 job, right? And so the timeline is going to be very different and the expectations are going to be very different. One job might take 3 months to complete, one might take 3 days to complete. So set the type of job, the type of reminders, and the type of expectations so that you can set the path forward to execute on your plan. Next thing here, keep the team accountable. So once you have all that documented, guys, these are just fundamentals. Once you have everything documented, bite-sized, you have to remove the excuses from your team, right? Remove the excuses of why things aren't getting done, how you imagine them being done. And then when they're not getting done, try to figure out what's the problem. Not in a accusatory kind of way and saying it's your fault, but saying, hey, this is not happening. What's going on? What's the problem? How can we get together and solve them together? And that's, leadership versus having a boss, right? You want to keep your team accountable, saying we're in this together. We're trying to all make margin on these jobs. So as an executive, how can I help you help the rest of the team, right? And keeping people accountable. One really great thing that you can do is if you have a weekly, bi-weekly, or 3 times a week project management meeting, is have people share their challenges. Because then you have the collective, I had that challenge last time. This is what I did and this is how we solved it, right? So that groupthink, group sharing is a really great and powerful tool to help problem solve. But not only that, keep your team accountable, because you don't want to be the guy with the same problem every time, every job, because that becomes embarrassing to your peers. So that's a nice tool that you can do there. And once you have all of those steps nailed down in your project management process, this is the next thing you have to do. You can't change your process. Don't change it. I see this time and time and time again. Once you have it, then once you have it nailed down, you as an executive, you see all the opportunities to optimize. But the problem is the rest of your team is just starting to feel out the repercussions of those changes that you have made. Now, if you change it, a week or two after you finally have everything documented, then there's another learning curve that you're throwing at your team. And it starts to become unmanageable, and you're changing, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every month. So what I would challenge you to do is don't change, let your team get comfortable, and then revisit maybe once a quarter. If you're revisiting once a quarter and optimizing once a quarter, then you are able to see the long-term benefits and the long-term change, and then make all those optimizations all at once instead of one by one and by one. Let's say you're trying to optimize your project management process and you change something that you see right in the beginning. What you don't see is what that one change cascades into all the other ways you're impacting the business. That's what you don't see. And if you're too quick to pull the trigger, you don't see the unintended consequences that come with that change. So slowing down, making more precise changes is critical. Next thing, after you set some time, you feel the repercussions of your process, see the gaps, right? The problem is when we see the gaps before we give it some time, right? And when you see the gaps, you have to encourage your team and say, I see the gap here. I see how you're stretching to make this happen and how difficult that is. And when you see the gaps and how you're stretching your team beyond capacity, encourage them, saying, it's not going to be this way for forever. Just hang with me for a little bit and we're going to figure it out. And what I mean by this, to put some hard language on it, is let's say you find a bottleneck with maybe your punch list or your manufacturer cities and finals, or pulling your permits, whatever bottleneck you're seeing, maybe you need to fill those gaps by hiring someone specialized in that area to fill in the gaps for the rest of your team. Now, here's an example of how that happens in sales. A lot of our companies that start to have 10, 15, 20 salespeople, they start to hire a dedicated estimator, a dedicated takeoff person, right? A dedicated sales administrative person, so that they can take those responsibilities off of the salespeople and optimize the salespeople's time. Same thing with project management. What are those bottlenecks that are really slowing your project managers down that you can offload with a specialized hire? And that's one way you can fill the gaps. So after you fill the gaps, you review, optimize, document. You go through this process over and over and over and over, once a quarter, once a year, every 6 months, until you're honing into your process. And some of our companies I know that are making 10% net profit on their company, and they're feeling great, they're doing great, they're able to reinvest into their company by following these steps here. Now, I want to share with you guys one company that I thought does this really, really, really well. Best Roofing. I got a peek into their operations and project management department. And just to wrap us up here in our time today, this is they call it the 31 steps of a construction project at Best Roofing. And I would encourage, it took them a year to put this together, a whole year. Before this, it was in the head of Greg Wallach or the VPs or whoever's been around the longest to be able to know what's going on. So eventually Greg just said, I got to get this down on a piece of paper. I got to get this down in the hands of everybody, so the whole team knows from A to Z how we behave and how we act as a business. So this is the result of that. So you can see step number 1, proposal request and pre-qualification process. And these letters down here are the different people responsible for that activity, right? So business development manager, BDC is business development coordinator, and CSM is construction sales manager, right? So these 3 are responsible for this step. Step number 2, follow-up CRM process begins. They put it into follow-up. Number 3, assign an account manager. Then they do a takeoff. Then they determine the best roof system for that opportunity. The proposal is prepared and delivered. Contracts and permits are application is signed, assigned project management team and update schedule, initial project setup, complete project folder, sales and estimating pass off meeting to senior construction team. Number 12, pre-construction planning, introductory site visit and CM planning, scheduling, client meetings and construction team meetings, client meetings, construction team meeting, pre-damage roof inspection, first OPM report, register manufacturer warranty documents, job safety and staging area setup, material and equipment delivery to job site. We haven't even started work yet. Step 21, start work, commence work, right? Step 22, intermittent city inspections. So having those inspections come in throughout the job. OPM reports to clients, project inspected by safety director, progressive billings and collections, final inspection and manufacturer, city and owner, closeout package prepared, project completed, closeout OPM report, closeout book presented to clients, construction pass off to service, continuous improvement and feedback loop. Step 31 is probably the most important step on all of those. So they're continually having that. They actually hired a person who's head of education now to manage this education. Now, if you give this to somebody, whether it's in sales, project management, they know what's going on and who's responsible for what and how a construction project is done at the company. So that's what I had to share with you guys today. Please post in the chat if you would like a copy of this presentation. We'd be happy to send this out. We've also recorded this meeting, so you'll have that available to you on YouTube or on our website. We're putting a place where we can have a repository of all of these webinars and talks. But thank you guys for joining us today. Let me know if you have any questions. All of this PM best practices can be baked into Followup CRM with our new project management module. And our new project management module, it's in beta. We have some clients on it, using it, giving us feedback, loving it. If you're interested in joining the project management module, please reach out to me. Jason, I'll definitely send you the presentation in PowerPoint. Yep, same thing, James. Definitely check out North Captiva. It's a fun place. But if you guys are looking to really streamline your project management process, let us know. I'll show you how we do this within Followup, and you guys are going to get in control of the business and really create predictable and profitable revenue. So please reach out to us. If there's any questions, let us know. We're happy to help. Thanks, guys.